Sim is a sweat box. You've heard this before. Perhaps you get your schedule for initial, recurrent, or upgrade. You're looking at the instructor names. You're trying to gather information on who they are, what you can expect, and mostly what you're trying to figure out is, are you in for a difficult time or a productive time? I'm going to share with you some of the worst instructors, in my opinion, really boil down to one trait that they all share, which is selfishness. It's a human trait. It's one that can be worked on, but I'm going to share with you why I believe that. Joe Munoz, OneStepPrep.com. Selfishness really boils down to many of the rationale behind poor instruction, even poor interviewing skills. In the interview prep course, I talk about how your selfish answers really lead to no success in the interview. Maybe I'll touch on that in a little bit, but let's talk about it in the realm of training. Ultimately, as an instructor, your success is my success. I genuinely want to see my students do well. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't hold true for many instructors. They really just want to hear themselves talk, prove what they know, find somewhere where you're deficient and not bring you up and make it a productive lesson to progress you in a positive direction, but actually almost use it as a why aren't you studying, bring you down more type of approach. Absolutely horrible, non-productive way of quote-unquote teaching or instructing anything. And this boils down to that person and their ego trying to really feed it and diminish your light, and in doing so think that theirs glows brighter, which is simply not the case. And so, you know, when I deliver AX3 instruction, which I have one November 4th, in person and virtual, I believe truly it is hands down, by far, bar none, the most effective Train the Trainers course in the marketplace today. I spend the first roughly 4 hours of the course building values. And what I'm really trying to do is take the instructor and put them in a position to be a receiver and not a resistor. Because one of the selfish traits that instructors have, not all, but some, is that they feel that since they have a title of instructor, they no longer need to improve. They don't need to be green and growing. They're already ripe and rotten. And so with that being said, we have to take and position them into a place whereby they are actually a receiver and not so much a resistor, because ultimately the only way for you to give something, including knowledge, is to have it. And the only way to have it is to be a student before you're an instructor, and therefore that's why I say the best instructors are ultimately the best students first. And so getting over this selfishness that is a natural human trait or characteristic is one of the focal points that I spend half the day on, and turning these instructors into students first so that they can be receivers and not resistors, and in doing so have more to give more and genuinely care about their students. Now later on, of course, we go through the 3 A's of AX3, attention, awareness, and accountability. I equip them with strategies that they can later on go on to equip the students with. But ultimately, they're not going to take on and onboard anything if they're not a receiver to the information. And in the realm of interviewing, because I mentioned interviewing a little bit, you know, when you're asked questions in an interview, like, why do you want to work here? Why do you want to leave your current employer? And you answer with selfish answers, that's ultimately going to lead you to a position of not being offered the job. Well, what do I mean about selfish answers, Joe? Simple. Why do you want to work here? And you start talking about yourself and why the opportunity works for you, because you always wanted to be based in Vegas. You always wanted to fly the 737 or the 320. You always wanted to work at the company where, you know, somebody who's close to you, perhaps your mother or your father or something, work. It's about you. You're talking about yourself. And in the interview prep course, I completely flip this, and what I do is I very much reinforce your need to talk not about what value the company brings to you, but what you are going to do to add value to them. You are entirely going to be talking about, and it makes sense. It's very much common sense, folks. If you owned American, Delta, United, Southwest, JetBlue, Spirit, Allegiant, you name your company, it doesn't matter. It could be Emirates. I mean, it could be whatever. Atlas Air. I mean, whoever you want to work for. Imagine for a moment you're the owner of the company. Do you want to interview a candidate that talks about why your company works for them? Or would you rather interview somebody who is entirely very much focused on how they're going to add value to you? Selfless answers. Listen, I'm going to share with you, I have an AX3 certification course November 4th. It's virtual. It's also in person. Mechanics of PSA Airlines are going to be there. This is going to be like, let me see, the fifth time that we do this with them, because several times I've gone to Cincinnati, I've gone to Charlotte, they've come to Miami, and we're working closely with them, as have we done with Atlas and other carriers. And it's getting traction, and rightfully so, because it works. And I hope to see you there. Put yourself in a position to continue to be a student. Most people know me as Joe, the instructor from One Step Prep, okay? I'm more of a student than an instructor. It's just the video and the content that you see is always me teaching something, but mostly what I am is a student, and I hope you do the same thing, okay? AX3certification.com/enroll is where you can find the link. Come in person to Miami, and if you can't be here in person, come virtually. But I look forward to working with you, all right?